Grab yourself a cozy drink, maybe even a glass of wine, and join us here at the soon-to-be named book club. Welcome, everyone. We are almost done, but not quite yet, with The Lost Apothecary. We're on our, section 4 of 5, I guess we would call it. Just a quick little recap. So far, we've, of course, met our three main characters of Nella Eliza, who is stuck in the 1790s. And then Caroline, my bad. Caroline, who's who's in present day. As always, we have Book Club Mom. My bad. We have Decal. And we have Heart Illustrations, but you can call her Soap. And I'm me. I'm Ian with Hostess with the Mostess. So other than meeting our main characters, we of course get our lovely introduction to the main men in our book, James and Frederick. They're definitely a hoot and still keep it coming.
That's a nice way of putting it.
Oh man. So recently, we meet Lady Clarence that Nella just has a bad feeling about something going awry, and we get a whole little ordeal with them concocting a new potion for her and finding out she wants to kill a woman, which is a no-no for Nella. And little Eliza and Nella kind of splitting off because Nella's like, I don't want this life for you, but you can tell there's a pull to each other, like a mother-daughter thing going on. And then we kind of leave off last section as the break between Nella and Eliza meeting Tom Pepper, who she continues to have a crush on in this section, and talking about the curse of magic. And then we left Caroline stumbling upon potentially the infamous Lost Apothecary, which in this section we find out what happened. So this section was super exciting. I was actually surprised to look back on our what we read, and I was like,
there's still some unanswered questions.
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, I did that on purpose, but but I definitely was surprised. Like when I was looking back to get a little summary for us, I was like, oh, we read a lot this section. We went through lots going on now. So in this section, how would you describe it in one sentence or less?
Does it matter who goes first? Do you care?
All
I'm
yours.
gonna say suspenseful and exciting. And I hate James still.
Yes, I agree. There were so many cliffhanger moments in this, from them talking about the fact that the police found the vial, or Lady Clarence's maid made an imprint of the vial, and it had some keys to the possible revelation that Nella is the poisoner, right? And so that was very interesting. And then, of course, everything that happens to James in this chapters that we read. So yeah, it's pretty crazy all the way up until the end when they're being chased by the cops.
Yeah, I was gonna say a never-ending tragedy.
My one sentence has got to be, was very good at picking where to leave off.
Again, yeah, you're pretty good at that.
very well this section for sure.
When I was reading, I was like, because I was reading late last night because I knew I wasn't going to have time to read today. And I was like, oh man, like 7 chapters. I was like, that's so much. And I was like, I'm tired and I want to go to bed. And then, but it was like, I wasn't annoyed, but, and then I was reading more and more. And then all of a sudden I got to the end of like where we were supposed to read. And I was like, I think the first thing I thought was, gosh darn it, Ian, you had to pick this moment because I just wanted to read more. I wanted to know what happened.
Yes. Yeah. No, these chapters definitely went quick. It was very like I was looking at it, I was like, oh, this might take a while, but no, it flew through. I was like, ooh, so much going on. So we start off this section with Nella's point of view, same day as them like that her and Eliza kind of doing their own thing now, and you know the day where Eliza met Tom Pepper. So you know, we start off with this like ominous, like something's coming, like she knows something's gonna happen. And then of course it dives into how she misses Eliza and how she really wishes she didn't send her away, but you know, for the good of Eliza, right?
Which I don't know if it was you, Ian, but someone last week said, I wonder if Nella actually misses Eliza, or I wonder if Nella's sad that she sent Eliza away. And then as soon as I started these chapters, I was like, oh, they were right.
And then that's right, we get Lady Clarence, who just rushes in hysterical. How did we feel about all that? Did we see something happening like this?
Revealing that her husband is dead and not his lover, Miss Blackwell. Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, or just her coming back hysterical, like something's wrong.
I think I expected that. I just didn't know how it was going to play out. But I think for Nella's case, I was hoping somehow the husband died, or it was like the both of them instead of just the girl, because like Nella was all for that never happening, and thank God it never did. So.
I'm just gonna say I have never really been a fan of Lady Clarence's. I just don't like her. I expected that something was gonna go wrong with the entire poisoning thing. I expected that something was gonna go wrong, but I didn't expect it to play out the way that it did.
Right.
I don't know what I expected, but I just like I didn't expect it to be like her maid that ended up being the one saving the vial, and I had kind of had a feeling that her husband was going to die anyway because it just seemed like that fit the story where, you know, Nella has never actually killed like a woman with her poisons or sold them to anyone who intended to kill a woman. So I guess I did expect her husband to be the one to die. I didn't know how that would happen, and I just didn't. Yeah, I'm just not a fan of Lady Clarence.
Right, so in her little hysteria, we find out that her husband died instead of the mistress. And, Nella was kind of like, well, it should have been a little bit slower than what happened. And we find out that Lady Clarence just straight up used the whole jar of the beetle powder, which definitely is intent to kill. My goodness.
Yeah.
And then, right, so he's dead. She, like, of course, we get the little, like, Lady Clarence over dramatization of, like, I can't believe she, came back and was like, oh, I'm so sorry for your loss. Even though, she's like, I knew what you were doing. Like, what? But the biggest. Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry.
No, you're good.
So, didn't she originally have the drink and then he drank it?
Yeah. So she originally had the drink and she brought it to the library with her, and instead of her probably taking even a sip, maybe she did end up taking a sip, but Yeah, he ended up drinking it instead.
Well, and also too, I think that's important to note because um like if Lady Clarence's maid hadn't like gone to the police already, they would have been fine because Lady Clarence knew there was no way that his mistress was going to say, "Oh, that was my glass instead," because that would have given away that they were having an affair and like that was his cousin and stuff. So they would have been fine if the maid didn't do anything. But the maid was like, "No, I'm gonna tattletale."
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I mean, we don't find that out yet. But we do find out that her jar, the jar that was given to Lady Clarence, ended up being an older jar of her mother's, and it had it had an address on it or something etched alluding to because everything's hard to read. um, and then so of course, you know, Nella's like, I gotta find Eliza. I gotta make sure like that's true. Like what happened here? And so, you know, Nella and Liza get back together and oh,
Sorry.
no, you're good. um right, so Nella and Liza get back together and then you get a whole little like Nella's consoling Eliza and trying to be like, it's okay, like don't freak out. And I think the best question was even just given by the book itself of this whole section of why do we go to such lengths to protect the fragile minds of children? I thought that was such a good question because, you know, she kind of realized that like she's doing the same thing that her mother did to her, which has left her with this like 20-year trauma.
Yeah.
So why do we think we do that with children? Why do we have that little like voice in the back of our minds being like, "Oh, we should just, you know, be straight up and truthful with them," but instead we kind of give them like a little optimistic view that may hurt more than anything else at the very end.
Because I think as a parent, you're always trying to soften the blow, right? Or you're always trying to make things more positive than negative, I guess. It's hard to tell. It's hard to tell a child the real truth behind a lot of things because the truth is usually pretty ugly. And so I think we're always trying to soften the blow and make things appear to be better than they really are.
Yeah, it's definitely a motherly stance by Nella, which I'm not super surprised. I really am only surprised like I think Nella would have a completely different outlook on her mother if she was just like blunt with her instead of what she's going through, you know, still to this, well, still to her day.
I think in Nella's case, a lot of her trauma, so to say, comes from the fact that her mother wasn't very honest with her about her illness and how serious her illness actually was. And I mean, we never really know whether or not that was because Nella's mother didn't know how serious it was. But regardless, I think a lot of the issues Nella has comes from the fact that her mother wasn't honest with her about what condition she was in. And I mean, I think for Nella, that probably just creates maybe some survivor's guilt because she probably felt like, oh, well, if my mom had just told me how bad it really was, maybe I could have done something to help. But in reality, like, Nella's mom was only trying to protect Nella. And in doing that, like, even though the intentions were good, like it just had lasting negative effects on Nella. Um, and I feel like that's hard to work through no matter what because I don't think I think even just like answering that question of like why do we like you said, Eden, why do we go to such great lengths to protect our children? I think it's hard to answer that question because from a parent point of perspective, like you said, book club mom, it's like you things are really hard and things are really ugly sometimes and you really don't want children to have to deal with them. And then there's some times where it's like children just sometimes don't like get a choice, and they're put into situations that they have to deal with. So like I think that's just a really hard question, or like a really hard like statement to like validate from either end, because both ends have really like good points to both of them, but then there's also negative effects on both sides. So I feel like that's also just a testament to how hard it is to be a parent because you're constantly faced with those decisions of like, how do I proceed? How do I raise my child? How do I do this? How do I do that? What do I let them know? What do I like explain to them? What do I choose to withhold? And it's like impossible to ever really know what the right answer is.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, the right answer is always like basically up to the child when they're already grown up.
After they've already experienced it.
Right. And of course, it's, case by case basis, so parents are never going to know. That's I guess, the fun of it. Did we have any other little quips about the whole Nella and Eliza ending in the first chapter, and to move on to Caroline, or should we move on to Caroline? I should say.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we covered everything.
So of course
That was
then
a long chapter.
it was a pretty long chapter. Yeah, I think it ended up being like 10 pages. I think it was like the longest one in this section. Yep. So the next chapter, we ended up, of course, meeting Caroline, and so in the little day by day thing they do in each chapter header, it does say Wednesday, so like the next day. But I am definitely assuming that they literally just meant midnight from where we started off.
Oh yeah, good point. I didn't notice that.
Mm-hmm. So we've hit midnight now. Her phone's at like 14%. And she's like struggling to take those pictures and see as much as she can. How did we all feel about that? I mean, she found the apothecary. Like we now have a direct connection for both stories. Basically, we have all of our characters now in the same space.
At first, I really didn't expect her to get out of there because her battery is so low and it was dropping so fast. One of those things, especially if it's like colder out or something, when your phone just like, I'm not going to work anymore. Especially if you have a flashlight on for that long. It's kind of like, we're just going to die on you. So I really expected that to happen. So I'm glad it didn't, because like I really don't know how she would figure her way out of there besides trying to touch the walls, which I know are disgusting. So I would not do it. I would just stay there.
Just be lost for the next 200 years until another woman in peril finds you.
Exactly.
Yeah, that was exhilarating. That was very fun to read. Of course, like you're reading I mean, battery life on phones has never been fantastic, but man, her phone must suck. like even for like a couple years ago standards, like that still seems very, very bad.
Right.
So surprised that. Well, okay. So reading this chapter, it only being the second chapter of the section, I was so surprised that the apothecary was like untouched and like left like the way
I
it
know.
was. And then we learned later in the chapters that obviously they left in a rush, and so that makes sense that it was just completely left untouched. But yeah, I was just surprised by that.
Yeah, but to just the thought of just like stumbling upon something like that. Oh my god.
The history buff in me was like, oh my god, she's like Indiana Jones, let's go.
But I also think that's just the testament to how smart Nella was, essentially. Like she completely built a room, and even the only reason Caroline saw it was because things were falling apart. Like, she noticed the inconsistencies. So I think that's just a testament of how smart, like, definitely Nella, but, you know, this could easily be, I feel like, a real person in history, even. Like, the amount of credit people don't give, you know, for their secrets is impeccable. So yeah, so we get to her phone dying, which was super exhilarating, but also kind of like, just tell me what you saw. Like, so we basically, though, we find out that the ledger's still there. So that's super been untouched, which is, I think, a little worrisome for our other storyline. And of course, you know, we get back to James wide awake, and so we don't even get to see what photos she took to, like, definitely make sure that we, you know, found the apothecary. But that moved along pretty quick.
So curious as to what's gonna happen with the apothecary just itself. Like, I mean, what do you even do when you find something like that? Like, who do you call? Like, if this was real life and like you stumbled upon like some ruins that nobody had discovered or like something that was hidden, like, what do you do? Like, what do you do?
Yeah, who's that even owned by? Even, you know, like who owns that piece of history that nobody knows about?
It's true.
Who owns it, and like, what hoops do you have to jump through to protect it? Like, because I feel like a lot of times, I don't know. I just saw this thing. I used to live in Grand Rapids, and somewhere they were doing construction on like some new sewers, like north of Grand Rapids, and they found a like a baby mammoth skeleton, like as they were digging to build this new sewer. And so they had to like call in like the Grand Rapids Public Museum, and like I don't know who else they had to call in, but like if it, like, think about it, like if someone's developing like an apartment complex or like a suburb or something, or putting in a new sewer, it's like somebody owns that land, and like what kind of hoops do you have to jump through to preserve that like place? Or like, if you can't, like, do you just have a limited amount of time to like excavate? Like, I don't know, I just find that so fascinating.
That's crazy.
I mean, she of course like luckily has a like mini in with Gaynor, so like she would know what resources or at least who to contact. But yeah, I don't know who you would actually contact. Like, even in the areas we all live in, like, what would we?
Like, who do you call? The police? They're not gonna do anything.
All right.
Maybe I should have been an archaeologist.
Yeah. Considering your backdrop, probably.
I guess that makes sense. I do have a love for that.
Yep. So of course, with those pictures, we get a little like, she found the apothecary, she found the ledger. So James leaves, but then he comes back sick, which is interesting. And then, of course, all at the same time of James getting sick, Gaynor's like, "Hey, I've got something. I've got the manuscripts. They just came in, and you're not gonna believe it." I think the funniest part about actually all of that, though, was Caroline like, "Oh, I can't come there right now. But can you bring them like to here?" And Gaynor's like, "No." Outside the library. Honestly, I'm actually right. Honestly, I'm kind of surprised she was able to take copies.
Right.
I was like, with the amount of like light sensitivity that all of these like documents are usually like protected by, I'm very surprised. Like, I know it probably just moved the book along, but I am very surprised she was able to make copies of those.
Well, I think if they're in good condition, they always try to make copies of them, because you know it's not going to be around forever necessarily. Like, it could deteriorate at some point. I don't know. I mean, I did a study on the Book of Kells, which is like an old Irish manuscript.
Yeah.
And they like took copies of every single page of it. And I mean, even like the display of the Book of Kells is like really regulated, where they only like it's in 2 different volumes. They only ever display one volume for like a certain period of time. Like the lights are always off in the room, and it's under like 4 inches of glass and like really low lights. So they do really protect them, but I feel like they also make copies of them just out of like a precaution. So I feel like just like a one-time copy isn't a big deal. I don't know for sure, but that's just my assumption.
Well, yeah, that makes sense. I mean, the more people touch things or the more exist, things just exist, they're going to deteriorate. So might as well make copies while you can.
Mm-hmm.
um, yeah. So we get, yeah. So we end up finding that. Well, we find out that the image is of the vial in the little manuscript. Um, I guess we can just talk about. Yeah. No, I think they do go through the first article at the end of that chapter. So we find this
Yeah, I
little
think they do.
yeah, so we find this little newspaper article talking about the murder of Lord Clarence and them trying to find the murderer, which might be an apothecarist and all this other stuff. And it sets up the tension for the rest of our our storyline with Nella and Eliza. And it just kind of ends there, of course, to leave us on our toes. So, so then we get our we go back to our old little storyline with Eliza and Nella. Eliza ended up being first, and so she of course was feeling awful for her mistake throughout the whole thing. Lady Clarence come back and returns with the jar. So we're all sitting pretty like, oh, the crisis is averted. Yay. But then also we know there's a picture of the vial. So we're kind of like, I was definitely like, oh, how did that happen?
Yeah, I was a little confused, and I feel like it wasn't that long till we found out that like the maid had made a copy of it. But
Oh, right.
yeah, I was like, I think I actually kind of thought that Lady Clarence may have like double crossed Nella, but then of course we find out that she didn't, and it was the maid instead. But yeah.
Yeah, in the span of what, like 2 hours, I was like, dang, you move quick. Yeah. Yeah. So go ahead.
I was gonna say I'm a little confused. How did she make the copy? Was it with wax? Did they say, or how?
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
she
I
did, like, a
feel.
rubbing of it.
So I feel like like they did a rubbing of it. So like how you put the paper on like something and then you like take a crayon or whatever to it and do this and it pops up with the image.
Yeah.
That's
Ever do that
basically
when you
what
were a
they
kid?
did.
Yes, I just like could not figure out, like could not picture it in my head how they did this.
Yeah. So that's how she that's how she did that.
So it wasn't the picture in the newspaper was a picture of the rubbing, right?
Yes.
That's what I thought. Yeah.
So of course we see like a little animal that of course know is a bear. And then the letters B and then LEY. So we're holding out hope that they're not discovered by the end. We find something else out, but we'll get there. And then of course we get Lady Clarence just randomly offering Eliza a job. I was like,
Get it out of here.
I know. I was like, what is going
So
on?
dumb.
Right.
And if I mean, I know Eliza didn't want to take it, but if I was Eliza, I'd be like, never in a million years. You seem like a total bitch.
And then the little point of view with Eliza ends with, her like, oh, well, crisis averted. I'm not going to have to use the spell, but maybe I still might for the whole ghost of Mr. Amwell thing. And then the next was Nella's point of view. So she is like, oh, I'm getting sicker. So I'm like, oh, great. She doesn't know it.
I'm curious to find out what's wrong with Nella, and I wonder if we are ever gonna find out.
Yeah, I don't know. She's kind of given us like a like you can punch it into WebMD and it takes you to 10,000 different things of what it could be.
I mean, cancer maybe, like cancer in the bones, because she's talking about her bones being hurt so bad. So like, I don't know. I don't know what else it could be.
I'm not sure if we're ever gonna get to know
Find out.
what's going on with her, because of course she's not gonna go to a doctor. She is people's doctor basically.
Yeah.
What? She's not gonna trust a man.
Why would she?
Yeah.
You know, more than them, so
So we find out she's getting sicker, and then she has that little kerfuffle with the little kid, which I thought was very cute. But also sees the newspaper that has the picture of the wax impression, and so she freaks out. So we find out that the maid, did that and snitched. I was like, oh why? And then she gives us 3 possibilities of what's gonna happen, and it seems like they all ended with death. I was like, okay, Nella. I'm like, all right, I guess you're really positive that you're gonna end your life, because of course she's like, well, I can hide in my apothecary and just chill there. But then she's like, I'm probably gonna die in 3 days anyway, and I'm like, okay. She also, her other option was, still hiding there but being found. But then, of course, you find the ledgers, and it's going to be a whole thing for all of the women that she's helped. And then she's like, well, I guess there's one more option. She's like, I can just throw myself into the river. I was like, this is very dramatic, Nella. I was like, I understand you're probably being logical about it all, but this is a little out of character for you of, what's going to happen.
Maybe she's just scared to die.
She's really scared to die. I think she really thinks it's close. Because I don't think if she had a fear of death, she would have the option of jumping into the river.
I mean, maybe that's why she wants to jump, because she doesn't want to wait for the disease to whatever it is to take her. So she's like, I'll just take it into my own hands.
I think she knows like the risks and consequences of each like option, right? So I think she understands like she doesn't have much time left. She doesn't want to spend it in jail because she knows she's just gonna die there. And then if it leads them to her like apothecary, then that's gonna ruin however many people in that her ledger or whatever the book. That's gonna ruin so many more lives than just her one. So I think she's doing this for the good of absolutely everybody at this point.
Oh,
Which I
for
guess
sure.
one thing that we can count on is that the ledgers were never found. So, I mean, one thing we know for sure is that none of the women in the ledgers were ever reprimanded or anything like that.
Right.
Or had to
Surprise.
face consequences.
I would assume that Eliza goes back at some point, but the way they're making it sound right now, it makes it seem like if it's untouched.
Right.
Well, I mean, the vial that Caroline finds is a light blue vial with the bear engraved on it. And I don't know if you guys caught this, but when Eliza, I'm kind of jumping a little ahead, Ian.
That's fine.
But, like,
No, you're perfectly
I
okay.
want to say this before I forget. But the vial that Caroline finds is also a light blue vial. And then when we see Nella and Eliza rushing out of the shop, Eliza's made her little potion or whatever, and the 2 vials Eliza takes and like hides in her dress are a light blue one and like a light pink one. And so when I read that part, I kind of like gasped a little bit because I was like, oh my gosh, I bet you the vial that Caroline finds is the one that Eliza had, because obviously everything in the apothecary was left untouched. Nobody was ever able to go back there once they left. And she found the vial in the river. So I'm kind of thinking that Nella and Eliza are going to jump in the river together or get pushed in somehow. I mean, how? I don't know. Just a prediction.
It is definitely a little mystery because, of course, Nella's talked about jumping in the river, but Nella doesn't have the vial. um, right. So we basically, after that, Nella just like freaks out after seeing the article, and she runs back, of course, to see Nella making the potions that or Eliza. She runs back to see Eliza making the potions that she's been like talking about now for a couple chapters. But of course, Eliza uses Nella's own like mechanisms against her, which was very like, aw. But also, yeah, the comparisons, Eliza's like, well, this feels like Frederick, and I was like, maybe a little, but not as bad.
Well, I guess that was in that same chapter. I didn't realize it when they talk about Eliza taking a little blue vial.
Yes. And then, of course, before we get to our lovely endings with both both storylines that we have, we jump back to Caroline's storyline, which is the same day still. So same day of Wednesday of finding the apothecary at midnight. Meeting with Gaynor, and Gaynor is alluding to something goes awry in the second article or manuscript that she has, and we don't get to it because James calls. I'm like, James, stop interrupting. But then, of course, we get to James, and he's like inches away from life, and we find out that he, for some reason, decided to take a sip of the eucalyptus oil instead of applying it topically. I'm like, what?
This dude is just so dumb. Like, I'm sorry, but after everything he's done, it was a little hard for me to feel bad for him for ingesting eucalyptus oil, because everybody knows that you don't just ingest essential oils. That's like bottom tier, like basic knowledge, basic common sense. Like, I mean, I was already disappointed in James, but now I'm just even more disappointed in him because his own stupidity gets Caroline in a pickle that she doesn't deserve to be in.
And also, like, I just imagine those, like all those like essential oils, they have like the world's smallest little, like the pouring or like just like to get a dab out. So I'm like, how did you get that off, first of all?
What were you doing, dude? Just like standing there, like shaking it into your mouth?
2
Like,
hours just like waiting there for it to like, I don't know.
letting it
I
like drip slowly? Like, come on, man. How dumb do you have to be?
Like, if something
God.
has that top on it, like, don't you know, like, oh, you probably only need like 1 or 2 little
Well, and they
dashes of something, like,
say
come on.
too in the chapters that like there's a warning on the label, like don't ingest. Like, oh my god.
Right, and Caroline was even like freaking out, and she's like, "You've used these oils before. What were you thinking?" It was just, I'm like, James, what are we doing? So yes,
Dum-dum.
such a dum dum, James, certified dum dum.
Jeez. Gosh, it just made me so mad.
Right, and of course, these chapters keep leaving off of lovely cliffhangers for us. So of course, the one of the paramedics decides to see the notebook, and I'm like, oh great. Of course. And I kind of felt that was going to happen, especially with the, like, I just threw my stuff down and my notebook was just there. And I'm like, go get your notebook.
And also, like, it's not her fault. He is the idiot who drank the eucalyptus oil. Like,
right.
she didn't think that she would have to tell her, 30-year-old husband, yeah, I have some eucalyptus oil. Go in the bathroom, slather it on your neck. Like, she wasn't thinking that she was going to have to tell her 30-year-old husband instructions like he's a child. And now she's taking the fall for the fact that he ingested this eucalyptus oil because he's just an idiot. Oh my God.
Yes. As much as I want to be like James is just a dum dum, I also could imagine. I can also just imagine the amount of stories I could probably get of just women being like to their husbands or whatever. They're like, "What are you? How do you not know what you're doing?"
My dad literally came home one day when we were kids and my mom was like making cookies and like also had dog treats on the counter because she was training Tuesday. And my dad literally came in the kitchen and started eating the dog treats and he'd eaten like 3 of them. And he was like, Laura, like, I'm sorry, these cookies really aren't good. And my mom was like, what cookies? She's like, those are dog treats. Like, oh. So that's the story of how my dad ate dog treats.
Without us.
What did you say?
Said, how would men survive?
Literally have no idea. No clue.
It's impeccable. A lot of them have lasted as long as they have.
Yeah.
I agree.
So, right, and so before we get to our 2 lovely endings of both storylines, we jump back to Eliza, and she ends up finding out Nella, of course, is keeping everything hush hush. She's like, I don't want you to know. I'm just gonna leave. I'm gonna end this now. We're all gonna be fine. I'll take the sacrifice. I'm like, okay, Nella. And I mean, granted, I probably would do the same thing in this situation, but she's definitely being a total mom figure for everyone. But Eliza, basically sneaks in, or just, she doesn't even sneak in. She just walks into the Clarence estate when everything's going on. I'm like, that.
This girl has got guts.
Right. I'm like, but that would happen though. She would just walk in and everyone just kind of like just ignores her, and then one person's like, wait a second. What are you doing?
What the heck are you doing, little girl?
So then we find out from Lady Clarence, who thankfully is keeping everything like hush hush. Like, I definitely was a little worried Lady Clarence was just gonna like spill the beans and just, screw over Nella in every way, shape, or form. I think
the only reason she didn't is self-preservation. Like, she knows if she spills the beans, she's also going to take the fall because she's the one who went to get the poison. Even though it was to kill her cousin, it still killed her husband, so it still implicates her. So I think Lady Clarence's motive is just complete self-preservation. Which, are we surprised? She's rich.
Well, right, but that's why I am a little surprised, because not only is she rich, but if she gave up the killer they're looking for, she could probably strike a deal.
Point.
Oh,
she probably doesn't recognize that, though.
Well, I think she may realize the depth of the situation. So, maybe give Lady Clarence some credit, I guess. As much as I don't want to for this whole situation. But we do find out from her.
All of this.
I know. We do find out from her, though, that more people are coming up with these mysterious vials. People we've even read about with the storylines. So that was interesting. So that is also disappointing because now we're just kind of like, oh boy, we're coming to a head of this problem. So of course Eliza runs back to Nella, and Nella's like super duper calm. She's clearly come to her like, oh god, come to terms with everything. And I think so. At the end of that little section, Nella's, I think, reminiscing with the old. Oh my gosh, what word do I want?
Journals, you mean?
Yeah, the old entries, exactly. The old entries in her ledger. And then and then just to top everything off, which I thought was like a nice little ending to it, but I also kind of I thought it was funny how it was just introduced. Was Eliza finally asked about the blood and her period? I was like, at least that was taken care of.
Right. You got her answer finally.
Right.
Period
Thank
is.
God.
Right. And of course, Eliza's like, I should have asked earlier. I go, yeah, you probably should have. So who do we want to talk about first at the ending? Do we want to talk about Caroline's ending, or do we want to talk about Nella and Eliza's ending?
I mean, I could talk forever about either one, so I don't really care which one we pick 1st.
Start with Caroline.
Okay, we'll do it by chapter order then. So yeah, so both of our ending chapters are very short and sweet, but punched with or packed full of a lot of stuff going on. So to end, Caroline is sitting down with police inside the hospital. James is, fighting for his life over in some room, and we get some little stories that James is spouting out info about everything, and or some things at least, while he drops back into consciousness to the nurses, which of course is being reported back to the police. And basically one of the two, so Caroline is basically getting arrested as we leave her. And so is James trying to get her thrown in jail? Like she asks herself?
Well, if she gets thrown in jail, he can divorce her and then move on with his freaking mistress. So I just have to say that I am going to be so mad if this whole ingesting eucalyptus oil, James almost dying, brings them back together. Because Caroline, honey, it's not your fault that he's dumb and he still cheated. I know you were in love with him for like 10 years, but it's really at this point not sounding like love, because it sounds like you gave up everything to be with him and he didn't really care. And now he has made the stupid mistake of ingesting a toxic oil. So please don't take him back. Even though he almost died, please don't take him back. Like, please do not. He does not deserve you.
I mean, do we think that this whole situation is going to bring them back together?
Well, I think we still haven't figured out if she is pregnant or not.
Oh my God, I forgot about that.
Right. Yep.
Because she keeps talking about throwing up and everything, and I'm still always like, is this nerves or is she actually pregnant?
Caroline, you would be a great single mom. Just telling you that. Get that child support money. We know James makes money. Okay? You'll be fine, honey, I promise.
Yeah, I don't.
If this ends with her in jail or going back to James, I will scream.
I'm not really sure if she's gonna go to like jail. She might. I don't know where this is leading. Like, it might lead her to go to the actual like prison for like a minute, but
What?
to like the actual like prison or something, like the actual like holding cell or something they have at their like station. But it'll only be for like an hour or two, and then if James pops up, then or like pops back, which it seems like he should, because if he's coming back into consciousness, I can't imagine he's just gonna drop dead on us. That would be an interesting ending.
instead of just completely ranting about how stupid James is, I do think it's also important that oh shoot, I lost my thought. Hold on. Crap. It was important. Oh yeah. Okay, so sorry. Um like when they're interrogating her, Caroline's like going through her options of what to say, and I think it's important to note that she says, what am I going to tell them? Anything I tell them is going to sound like an excuse. Anything I'm gonna tell them is gonna sound not real, and I don't have an alibi because like I was the only one there when this happened, and like even though I wasn't really there. So I think that's actually pretty important to note, and it could be foreshadowing to some extent, but like I mean, she's right. Like, she had nothing to do with him ingesting this oil. Like, he did that all of his own volition. But, like, her story of, like, you know, she wasn't, you know, I didn't poison him. I'm doing this research project. Like, I promise, like, and then the fact that they have, like, you know, he cheated. They have marital issues. Like, I feel like it's just all going against her. And, like, it just is, like, the perfect coincidence. And so I think that is important to note. I don't like it, but I think that was kind of like clever of the author to write it that way.
And the thing is, like, for James, like, coming, like, in and out of consciousness, I definitely know, like, you just say some very off-colored things that you shouldn't tell, like, somebody you really don't know. So I think for him to say, like, having a rough patch and all this other stuff, you're like, dude, but, like, at the same time, I feel like he really can't help it. And, just, like, poor Caroline. Like, the only person that can really help her and, like, the only alibi she would have is Gaynor now, and I feel like she's not even thinking of her, though. So I'm a little worried.
Yeah. I'm very worried.
Yeah. I mean, where do we think we're going with Caroline? We're ending our book within this next week. So what's the ending? What's going to happen with Caroline? We are.
Yeah, we're going to read to the end. Wow.
Yep. So what is Caroline's ending? Anyone got any predictions?
I hope she doesn't get back with James.
Okay.
I hope she doesn't go to prison.
Okay.
I hope she stays in London. I hope she leaves Ohio. I hope she becomes a history researcher. I hope she starts like going to school at Cambridge. I hope she becomes best buds with Gaynor. I hope that if she's pregnant, she's like, heck yeah, I can do this. I'll raise this child on my own. Yeah. That's what I hope.
So are we actually thinking that's how this is gonna end, or are we just hoping that's how this is gonna end?
Oh, I guess that would be your question. That's how I'm hoping it's gonna end. But I guess that would be in a perfect world, so I'm assuming I'm not gonna get what I want.
What do you think you're not gonna get that you want?
I just have a feeling that nothing's gonna be like, it's not all gonna be tied up neatly like with a bow.
I feel like after this whole situation, I think the James thing, I think she might stay with him. Just because it's like one of those, like, it's a near death experience. It brings everybody together, even though we don't like it. She might have his child too, right? So it's kind of like, ooh, I hate the situation, but I don't know.
I am gonna lose my mind.
They might like start over in London instead of going back to Ohio.
I still would not be
I mean, I think the other thing we have to kind of realize is that, like, this is only like day 3 or 4 of them of their 10-day trip. Like, we didn't even get through the 10 days.
Yeah.
Oh.
James already been poisoned.
I wonder if we'll have like a time jump or something at the end.
Do you think we're gonna get a time jump for both storylines, or just Caroline's, or just like Eliza and Nella's?
Caroline.
Just Caroline's. Okay.
I think Eliza and Nella are pretty much going in only one direction.
Or Caroline and Eliza, but definitely not Nella.
Yeah, I don't think Nella's making it to the end of this book.
No.
I kind of think Eliza's gonna die too.
I think it's kind of pointing towards that, but I feel like there's so much more with Tom that could happen. Like break the spell.
I know there's so much more that I want to happen, but I just still have this feeling that both Eliza and Nella are gonna die.
I don't know. I think she made a promise to Tom to go back, so
Maybe they'll go to Tom when they're running.
I know. I wish I would have really looked at the map a little more. Maybe I will do that in the last few chapters.
I know. I realized that after I forgot there was one chapter that was really we're just breaking down all the geographical things. I was like, oh, I totally forgot to keep looking at the map.
Because yeah, where is she? And she's trying to go to the water, right? Or do we not know?
I mean, Fleet Market, it looks like, is the street that leads right to the bridge.
Right.
So really all they have to do is leave the alley and then run down that street.
Yeah.
The shop with the books is really, really far from the apothecary, though. The shop where Tom is.
Yeah. I don't know.
We haven't read anything about Bartlett's Passage, have we? Or St. Paul's Churchyard, right?
I don't think so. Unless it was
I feel like I remember saying Bartlett's Passage, but I don't remember where what that was.
the only time I think we would really hit those is on Eliza, either going to the Lady Clarence estate.
So Lady Clarence, Eliza would have, I mean, by the way the map's laid out, Eliza would have no reason to go to Bartlett's Passage before going to Lady Clarence's, because 1, 2, and 3 on the map are Bear Alley, the Amwell estate, and the Clarence estate. So,
Yeah, I don't know.
And I can't really tell what Bartlett's Passage is. It looks like just a dead end alleyway. Huh.
No idea.
I guess we'll see.
Yeah, maybe we'll get to it.
Yeah, maybe. I wonder if they try to run and then get caught in that alley or something. Oh, one more thing that I do want to mention about the whole situation with James. I just think it's really funny that he's almost about to meet his demise at the hands of an essential oil when we're talking about the apothecary shop killing people. When I read that, I was like, I kind of expected it when he came back sick. I was like, that's kind of fishy that he's so sick. I wonder if he drank. I didn't think that he drank the eucalyptus oil because I did not expect him to be that stupid. But I just was like, I wonder if he did something and he's sick. So I just think it's really ironic that he almost met his demise at the hands of something he could have gotten at Nella's apothecary shop. And I just think that's a really good juxtaposition of Caroline's story and Nella and Eliza's story. So I really liked that.
Not how we got on the rant about the map, but anyway.
I don't remember either.
I
I really
don't-
think Devin just said, um, sorry, I really think Decal just said, like, I wish I would have looked at the map more, and then I, like, just
Yeah.
started ranting.
It was all good. I was like, wait, how did we get back to our other timeline?
Thanks for coming to my TED Talk.
Oh, I mean, do we think James is gonna die?
No.
No. As much as I want him to, no.
That would solve a lot of issues, but no.
Yeah, I'm very interested to see if we end with, like, if we find out if she's pregnant, and how, like,
Yeah.
if how she checks, or if she checks, you know. And then
But she does have a pregnancy test, right? Didn't we learn that in the beginning of the book? Like she packed one or something because they.
Yeah, I thought so.
yeah, I think so. And we still don't know what's on that second article. So that, I think, has to be revealed eventually. So I think we're going to get a meetup with Gaynor again.
Yeah, I mean, she's got to get out of police custody to see Gaynor again, so. Maybe James pulls through and he's like, yeah, sorry, guys, I'm just an idiot. I drank it. Like, she didn't do it on purpose.
Would that lead to Nella, or not Nella, oh my god. Would that lead to Caroline being, like, thankful to James, though, and just kind of pushing it in that direction of them potentially getting back together? Ah!
I could see it happening, and I am already angry about it. That's why I don't think I'm going to get what I want.
So is there anything that, with Caroline's story ending, is there anything that would happen that you would be disappointed in this book? And
I think we already know how I feel, so I'll let everyone else go.
Yeah, I think I'll be disappointed. I don't know if I would. I mean, of course, I'd be disappointed in general if they get back together. But I think if she is actually pregnant, it's like understanding on some level. But I think I would be even more disappointed is that if they do try again and James just kind of goes back to how he was and Caroline's just kind of like stuck not adventuring or doing what she wants. Or, we might get like this little ending of like the vial and the apothecary, but that's kind of like her last adventure type deal. Like, I will be disappointed if that happens for sure. But I don't know if that author would do this. Ooh, I don't know though.
Big thumbs down.
Big thumbs down. What about everyone else?
I would be disappointed if they like don't release or find the like ledger or the book where everybody's names are and try to figure out the history of all those people, or like some historian hires her to help figure out all those people, because like that's all Nella wanted, is like those people need to be a part of history, even though nobody knows it besides this little name on a piece of paper. Like, I'd be very disappointed if that book doesn't show up somewhere in a museum or something like that, trying to tell their stories. Can't hear you.
Oh, how about you, book club mom?
Well, I think that Caroline is probably going to. She's probably going to figure out that she doesn't really have much of a future with James, even if she does find out that she's pregnant. I think she realizes her heart really is in history, right? She's already made all these steps to uncover what's happening with this story. And I think that's going to give her confidence in knowing that her future isn't with James and her future is doing what she's going to follow her heart. That's what I think is going to happen. So at least that's what I'm hoping will happen.
She deserves the chance for that.
That's right.
Any other predictions or how the present day storyline is going to end before we move on to
I think it would be cool if they make the little apothecary shop a museum. Like somehow it's like a little destination, like a little visit, like visit this place of the, late 1800s apothecary murders. Like, I just think that'd be so cool because that'd be something I would want to do. I love all that weird history stuff. So
yeah, it just makes you wonder who owns the rights to that area, though. That's the problem.
yeah.
You don't know if they haven't really figured out that this is even there, right? This has been lost for 200 years or something like that. So it's going to be pretty interesting to see, to see how, if in fact, they can do anything with it,
Because whoever owns it would have to be okay with it.
Right.
I mean, there's of course going to be like the historical protections and stuff like that, but what happens like with monetary value or like turning it into a museum, it's got to be someone has to make that decision.
Yeah, exactly.
Do we think we're going to get far enough with the present day story to see what happens with the apothecary, or is it going to kind of end on this like on something else?
I think if we don't, I'd like to see it still develop in some way. Like if we don't get to like a museum or a historical site or something like that, I'd like to see either Caroline or Gaynor like get more people involved in it and have like a full-on research project going. Like, so if we don't get like the apothecary museum or something, like I'd like to see them completing the project and not giving up on it or just letting it fall to the wayside.
Well, it'll be interesting to see how this all ends. Not only for Caroline in the present day, but also with Nella and Eliza. We get these 3 little pages at the very end of what we read that is just, oof, what's gonna happen? So of course it's Nella's point of view, which she's already a cynic at this point. And so she's like, death was permanent, and that was always gonna be what's gonna happen. And she's saying her goodbyes, and of course, with her being a mom right now, she's got, or like, mom, because she's not her actual mom. She being her mom, she's like, oh, I gotta act like I'm coming back here, and everything's gonna be okay, and everything else. And she's gonna, she says goodbye to Eliza to make sure everyone's like safe. But then they get out of the apothecary and they're on the run, but we don't know where because they just started. Super frustrating to just leave on that point, but also great ending.
I'm 100% expecting that the constable police officer dude with the scar recognizes Eliza. I'm expecting that to happen.
Well, I think that's probably why they started running after them. Like, I don't know if, like, they clearly didn't get far enough to realize, like, that's the address or anything like that. But I think seeing her at 2 places at once is no coincidence.
Maybe that's why the apothecary was never, like, uncovered because they never actually made it to the address. They see like Eliza and Nella and then decide to go after Eliza and Nella instead. And then what if that's the way that they never find the apothecary? That's a good point. I did not think about that.
Right, so they're running as a decoy, right? They steer the police away from really the scene of all the crimes, right, where they are making the poison. So
what's gonna happen with them? Are we running to a dead end? Are we getting a future for one or both of them? Like, is it gonna be this cute little moment where they get away and we get this nice little epilogue that like Eliza takes care of Nella in her old age or until she passes, XYZ, hopefully years, but probably not. Are we gonna get something where it's just terrible for both of them and they both end up dying? Or is it going to be some little happy little medium where one of them goes but the other doesn't? What do we all think?
I'm still sticking my answer. I think Nella's gonna go, and Eliza has a life with Tom. Okay.
The only man that's not trash so far.
So far.
So far.
Definitely don't trust him yet.
Yeah, I think Nella's as much as I hate it. I think Nella's gonna have to go. There's gotta be something. I don't know if the like vial in the river is a clue for one or both of them, or what's gonna happen. But I think Nella's definitely something's gonna happen with Nella. I don't know if they're gonna get caught per se. I think that'd be a disservice to both of their characters, or at least like Nella gets caught for sure. So I don't know how that's gonna all play out, but yeah,
I certainly think that Nella, Nella's ready to sacrifice herself, right? She already sees the end for herself. So no matter what happens, I think that Nella will either give herself up to the police to protect Eliza, because I think she believes that, she giving herself up or whatever she decides to do, jump off the bridge, whatever, that she'll give herself up to protect Eliza because Eliza has a future. She's young and healthy. So
I still have like an eerie feeling that both Nella and Eliza are gonna die. However, if one will survive, it's definitely gonna be Eliza. Like Nella for sure is just I think she's just gonna die. Like either because of whatever disease she's got going on or because she's gonna give herself up. I think the vial being found in the water can either be an indication of they've both died, or it can be an indication of maybe Eliza survives but tosses the vials into the water to get rid of evidence, so there's no evidence on them for them to be connected to the shop. So I guess I could see it going either way, but I just have a bad feeling that like it's just not going to end well for them, no matter how much I might want Eliza to survive. I don't know, I just have a bad feeling.
anything that would happen that you would be disappointed in their ending?
I think you made a good point that if they get caught, it would kind of do their characters a disservice. Like I can see them getting caught, but then like maybe Nella talking her way out of it and it never being connected to her because it's obvious in the present day that they never found who the actual killer was. So I think you're right that it would be a disservice if they were actually found guilty or actually caught. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I definitely think it would be sad if that happened, if they got caught and that was just their ending. I have a feeling with how dramatic everything's going right now, I think it's going to be super dramatic for both of them. So I'm definitely excited to see what happens.
Mhm.
How about either Decal or Booklet Mom? What do you? Would you guys be disappointed by anything in their storyline?
Yeah, I think getting caught, I think that would be a disservice unless somebody helped them out at some point or Lady Clarence comes back out of nowhere because she feels so guilty or somewhat. But um, I feel like the vials in the water, I feel like that was just kind of like a ploy to be like, oh, we might be here. Here's a sign of it, instead of like just to like lead them away from where they actually would be. But I don't know. I feel like there's not too much they can do of a disservice because like looking at Caroline's story, like the book is still there, so it's kind of like they've already did so many people justice that way.
Oh, true. They did preserve the apothecary, I should say. So
Yeah,
Mhm.
theory and so much history. So
do we think? Just random funny question I just thought of. Do we think if a woman was running the police force or whatever they're called, would they figure out what the address was?
Yeah. I think we've learned that men are dumb in this book.
Not only from personal experiences, from this book too. uh.
But I think even if women, I don't think they'd rat them out. If women were
Yeah.
aware, they had an inkling of what was happening, I don't think they'd rat each other out.
Good point.
She's doing, she might be doing something wrong morally, but in other sense, she's doing something right morally, right?
Right.
It's a very tough question. So,
True. That would be an interesting point of view. Just I know it would never happen
Mhm.
with the
Right.
1790s, but if we had a like female leading the investigation, but she already knew that the apothecary existed.
Yeah.
She would have gone there herself.
Exactly.
Well, especially because, women had no rights, they were just, they were just chattel, right? They were just hoping they could get married and whatever.
Fair. Any other prediction?
yes,
Oh yeah, go ahead.
sorry, just to kind of go off of that. I think back then it wasn't like a he said, she said. It was just a he said world. So she really was helping them for the greater good of everything that they've
Mhm.
been through because of these men, and nobody would believe them besides Ella. So I think that if there was like a woman police force, then they would definitely ignore it
Yeah.
all.
They'd look the other way.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah, I find this book very fun in how it how just normal people that you would never see in a textbook can just make such an impact on daily life, and how
Mhm.
like history books definitely don't tell full stories and we'll never get full stories of history, so it's always fun to explore. And even even now we'll probably never be able to go way back and see the impact just women have had on history. But even like in the last 100 years, with everything coming out, like these you know history books have written these men have done XYZ, but in reality, like if they didn't have their wives, they'd be nothing.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of women were in the shadows, just like Nella, right?
Right.
She was never really seen, right? I guess that's the best way to look at it. People ignored her on the street, and yet she held so much power, literally. She held people's lives in her hands. So,
Oh,
mhm.
I used to work at an assisted living home when I was in high school, and sweetest old lady you will ever meet, like tinier than me. And I don't remember her name off the top of my head because this was years ago, but she was in the Navy during World War II, and she was a part of the spy team that was like responsible for decoding all of the messages that like Hitler was sending to all of his like officers and stuff. And like I did like a whole paper on her. I think it was like when I was a junior or senior in high school. And I got like an exception from my teacher and stuff because we were supposed to write it about like not US history. But I was like, hey, listen, like I know this really cool old lady who was basically a Navy spy in World War II. I was like, can I please have an exception so I can write a paper about her? And like, yeah, the stories that she told me were just crazy. And I wanted to write a paper about her so badly because like I didn't really ever know if she'd ever told her story, or like, I mean, she definitely had like a little certificate like on her wall of like, you know, special service or whatever. But like, yeah, I just think that's cool that there's a lot. I don't know. There's a lot of stories of women that still have to be told, and yeah.
Other last comments for this section or where we're going? We get to end our book next week, which is super exciting. Book one is done. Yay!
So keep voting for the next book.
Yep. So.
Where the Crawdads Sing.
Right. Oh, okay. Okay. But yes, voting, of course, is still open for our next book. There will be a reveal video probably within the next week, just to give everyone time to buy their books wherever they can find them. But we do have our 4 books nominated, each one of us nominated one book, so there are 4 books to pick from. I did the Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires. Like I said, it's right in time for spooky season. Everyone else, if they want to introduce their nomination, go for it.
Vote for Where the Crawdads Sing.
Vote for Good Girl by Ruth Ware.
Can't remember mine. Fourth option.
Vote for number 4. It just won in another personal book club, but hey, I don't know the book.
The last thing you told me. Yeah. It's a good book. There's a lot on my mind.
Fantastic. All right. Well, definitely everyone go vote. And I can't wait to see you all next week for our finishing of this book. Maybe we'll do a cute little special stream for the end, but we'll figure that out later. But as always, I would like to thank all 3 of you for coming and being here and sharing your opinions about this lovely book. Once again, we are finishing The Lost Apothecary, so go ahead and finish that book if you haven't already. So again, you can find all of us on our lovely little Discord that we have. Soap, I know you have, where can they find you?
Oh yeah, I've got an Instagram just for all of my illustrations. It's Heart Illustration 7.
All right, are we gonna get a little illustration next week?
You know, maybe.
Okay.
I'm gonna be on a plane this Thursday because I'm coming home. So I'll be here, but we may or may not get an illustration. We might.
That's fine.
We might not.
Whatever.
I'm not making any promises. We might.
That's great. That's fantastic.
You'll just have to find out. You'll
just have to come in and see. As usual. What?
So keep the people guessing.
Keep the people guessing, always.
Keep it coming.
And of course, I'd like to thank our lovely producer slash engineer, Botsy, and you can always find him at Botsy Studio. He streams sometimes, he has his other socials. You can find both Soaps and Botsy's links in our bio, I think, yes. And you can also find all of our stuff on our link trees. So come join our Discord, come follow us, come see our lovely TikToks and everything else that we attempt to do. All right. Well, I will see you all next week. And thank you for everyone who's joining and everyone who watches later. I hope you're having as much fun as we are. Have a great night and see you next week.
Bye, everyone.